Germain. Explanation of meaning of higher knowledge of the science of man. Part 1. Violinio Germain. The next several lessons will be devoted to giving you a more intensive comprehension of the higher knowledge of God's invisible universe and your physical and spiritual relation to it. These lessons are a preparation for the knowledge of what constitutes life, death, and immortality, and of that unawakened light within man which utterly transforms every man within whom that light is awakened into a superior being. It is a strange fact, but tens of thousands are now seeking higher knowledge of the light, which indicates a transition condition in the human race during the last 3 generations. It is just that you don't see them so clearly as the negative produce of adverse actions. Further, the very terms applied to these ones give them an image of public disfavour and ridicule. Man, in fact, is finally seeking real higher knowledge behind the facade of empty catchwords and shouting and performing silly rituals. Man wants to find God in that perfection of calm control without distractions of silliness and foolish whooping or strange gyrations. By higher knowledge, we mean cosmic knowledge. You are one of these who seek that higher knowledge which lies dormant in all humans, for you desire these writings which are awakening that knowledge within you, as you are ready for it. As proof of that fact, our writings and teachings of higher knowledge are meaningless to fully 9 out of every 10 people, but that will be rapidly changing, which indicates that perhaps less than 10% of the so-called enlightened people of the earth are inwardly driven to seek and find that inner cosmic something which their souls desire. That means that fully 90% of humans have not yet begun to awaken their spiritual and intellectual natures. The few among the many who are truly seeking are intensive and hungry for that unknown light which is awakening in them but remaining elusive, and one after another is sought out for the lessons, and the only disappointment comes from the lack of full understanding. They feel the craving within them and seek it in many, many places, in many religions and cults, and in many diverse teachings. Many sincerely believe they have fully found that which their souls have been seeking, even when they have but felt a slight glow of that light of their own divinity. These many are inspired and uplifted as succeeding slight illuminings gradually transform them into cosmic beings who have become aware of their inner selves. It is because the few who seek never know just what it is that they seek, that we must make its meaning clear to you, so that you will better comprehend the import of the coming lessons. Very few of the most enlightened people of the world have the slightest knowledge of what higher knowledge means. They would not understand you if you said to them that higher knowledge comes from cosmic thinking toward one's inner immortal mind self, as opposed to the conclusions which is called knowledge, which come from outer sensing by the mortal brain self. The human race has not yet advanced to that stage where even world intelligentsia would comprehend its meaning. That is strange, but it is demonstrably true, for the human race is still in its infancy. Witness, for example, the many schools and foundations which have been formed for advanced learning and higher knowledge. All that have so far been formed show by their teachings and curricula that their conception of higher knowledge is limited to finding out more about the material universe through sensed observation and deductive reasoning. They do not even suggest the necessity of reaching out to the mind source of the material universe. The very facts of the matter are that it is certainly not desired that you come into higher knowledge. They ask only for more intensive and deeper concentrative observation of visible effects rather than invisible cause. In other words, their concept of higher knowledge means greater power for arriving at conclusions from sensed observations through the processes of reasoning and deduction. There is not the slightest indication in any of the high institutions of learning of the need of the genius type of mind, even though the greatest material and cultural progress of man is due to the genius type of inner thinking, inner visioning, and imagining. The outer sensory thinker of the mathematical and statistical research type of mind is the one who is favoured and highly patronized. In him is the hope for better instruments and machines for human comfort, and better machines to kill man in greater numbers. This means that physical man, who constitutes your present civilization, recognizes only the supremacy of physical man and the power to reason and deduce in him rather than to create by inspired guidance as all geniuses do. Your civilization would progress materially very much faster and with the greater stability of moral character which accompanies spiritual growth if the paramount purpose of man were to help the omnipresent mind to think and know, rather than the present purpose of helping the physical brain to remember and repeat. Less than 200 geniuses have appeared among men since the beginning of man, and not more than 30 or 40 illuminates. To these you owe what culture the world does possess, yet your whole educational system is opposing their development, and your society as a whole has leaned more to their crucifixion than toward glorifying them. It is most unfortunate that humans do not realize this sorry fact, for as long as mankind neglects to honor its geniuses who are engaged in the arts of peace and glorifies its heroes who are most proficient in the arts of war, the human race will continue to suffer the agonies of its own making. None of these institutions for the higher knowledge gives any indication that higher knowledge means searching for God as the creator cause of the effects of motion of which they believe knowledge to consist. Higher knowledge means trying to discover what the greatest mind that ever lived meant by saying, "The kingdom of heaven is within," or "I and my Father are one," or "The Father dwelleth within me," or "God is light," and "God is love," and all such other teachings of that great mind. The fact that such teachings are not of first import in every cultural institution in the world is proof of the fact that your civilization is still too young to be ready for them. The great mass of human race is still at such a low intellectual level that even resents the idea of the divinity of man, even though the Christ taught it very plainly when he said, "I and my Father are one. What I am, you also are, and what I do, you can also do." Moreover, the message has been repeated in every language from the onset of man. The sacred circle of the Christ being, the pale prophet Emmanuel, Buddha, Krishna, and Muhammad, be them who they might be, all spoke this very clearly and told mankind in their separate ages exactly where to find God and his heaven. But countless millions of men still retain the concept of heaven as being up there, above the earth somewhere, instead of being within self. Many men still think of God as an objective being, out there somewhere, who sits in judgment over his countless billions of people who come and go upon billions and trillions of earths like yours, or believe that you are the only earth like yours. Over 9/10 of the people of today's world retain this inherited concept of long past ages of man's primacy. As the spiritual in man unfolds, so also will man's institutions of science, education and religion. These three greatest necessities of the human race will then unite and become one. While awaiting that day, science will gradually unfold its spiritual awareness of God's invisible universe of light and know God as cause of the effects of which it makes use. Education will make as its highest objective the study of man as it too unfolds instead of the material product of man's body, and religion will someday substitute its God of fear and wrath with the God of love. Human institutions progress slowly, but they do progress, and like all humans, they progress more through their mistakes than through their traditions. Religion has made greater progress in the last century than in the previous 5 centuries. Hundreds of thousands have eliminated the God of wrath, fear and vengeance, which plunged the Christian world into 8 centuries of dark ages, and have substituted the God of love teachings. It is so misunderstood the purpose of the Christ's visit. The Christ was sent as man to save people from a belief in sin instead of from sin, whatever that might mean. Sin is only the falling short of perfection or being in error. As the light of intelligence unfolds in man, he will gradually know our universe and God's ways. God will work with you, but not for you. Explains clearly that sin cannot exist in nature and that it is purely a man-made concept. When mankind does know God's ways and processes of creation, he will know that God cannot possibly be sinned against. Man can sin only against himself by hurting himself or his neighbour. Imagine, for example, a man sinning against gravity by defying it or breaking its law. He would but hurt himself, for he could not hurt gravity, and gravity would have no reason for being wrathful about it. Such early conceptions of man gradually disappear as higher spiritual knowledge and God awareness come into human comprehension, as man slowly comprehends that God is inviolate law which no man can hurt or sin against. The same principle applies to the idea of a wrathful God. That concept is scientifically impossible. Wrath is a human emotion. It is one of many changing physical expressions. God is not physical, and he is unchanging. His only spiritual unchanging emotion is the ecstasy of love given out from his light. It is as scientifically unnatural for that flow of love to be interrupted by base emotions as it is for the flow of light from your sun to be interrupted by a flow of dark. Wrath and vengeance are ugly emotions which stem from hate and produce fear. The more the human race progresses toward a knowledge of our universe and God's processes of creation, the more it will comprehend that hate, wrath, fear and vengeance cannot issue from love, which God is. It is gratifying and gives much hope that hundreds of thousands of cosmic thinkers are now coming into the world to learn it. These, like you, are the real saviours of the race, if it still can be saved, for they are its seed of love. A spiritually illumined civilization will place its highest standards in making man, the unknown, become man, the known, instead of its present standard in making man a better material producing machine. It will then realize the warnings of the great poet who said, "In vain do we build the city if we do not first build the man." A spiritually illumined science which has grown to its present level through gaining knowledge from what it can see, feel and measure, will set its standards to knowing God's invisible universe, which it can neither see, feel or measure. It will have then discovered the omniscience of mind, the omnipotence of mind thinking, and the omnipresence of mind product in action-reaction. When that day comes, science can then verify God, for humans will then revel in the ecstasy of knowing instead of having but emotion and abstraction as the basis for their devotions. As it thus unfolds, it will gradually come to be realized that science knows many things, but the least of these many things it knows is man. The science of man is the least known and most important of any and all sciences. We began to give that higher knowledge of who and what God is, and where to find him, and what heaven is, and where to find that also, in the prior printings, and we will continue to reveal God and his zero universe throughout the remaining writings. May the word be blessed. As a basis of the higher knowledge you are thus receiving, we have given you several connections, which is the science of the universe. And God will work with you, but not for you, if you ask and study diligently while in that connection. Your brothers who share with you now in your earthly transition have come by truth in this very manner, and can raise you to their level of understanding most quickly if you will but allow of it and grant safety unto their passage among you. Now obviously I, Germain, do not need further of lessons, so they are for your use. They are for the sole purpose of helping you to unfold your own spiritual nature to that point of illumination when you will either gradually or suddenly become aware of God's presence within you. This is the highest goal any man can attain, and all can attain it in the measure of their depth of desire for its attainment. They are given in to the total of love of my being, that you might come into knowing. For I can give and share no greater gift in all the universe. I offer truth unto you, but I force nought, and you may do that which you will with it. But think carefully before casting this aside and denouncing the scribe and publishers. You have not done very well to date with your world. Look around you and speculate as to how much longer you have as you are going. So be it. So we put forth the lessons. I ask the seal of God, open bracket, belies, close bracket, put upon the promise given. I as Kohan, you as Sibet, open bracket, one who presents himself for such revelations, close brackets. May we enter into the light, transmute the false into truth, and become greater, open brackets, omni, close brackets, than that which is the universe. Come within the mighty presence of the I Am. Phoenix Journal 35, The Sacred Spirit Within. Mitakuye Oyasin.